Hello, everybody. My name is Kaylee. I work for Swindon Youth for Christ, and this is Elevate, where we are lifting our faith and strengthening our lives one week at a time. This is the penultimate week of the New Testament Elevate series. This is our second to last week. We're going to be looking at the context of the general epistle. So those are the letters that are written by Peter and John to understand what God was doing back then and what he wants us to do about it now. And so without further ado, let's get into the video. So if you remember from the Gospels, Peter and John were in the top 3 inner circle of Jesus' disciples. Between the two of them, they had a healthy competition. You'll even remember in the book of John, John describes himself beating Peter in a foot race. But now, as they've grown and developed and matured into apostles, that healthy competition has moved into a drive to help keep people on the path of truth. At the time when they wrote these letters, the church was really struggling with heresy, antinomianism, Gnosticism, and apostasy. Now, what do these words mean? Apostasy, as we've talked about before, is leaving the church. Gnosticism was a mixture of multiple beliefs that were floating around at the time, coming together to create almost a new type of religion. Antinomianism was breaking the law, and heresy is false teachings. So the two of them were making a huge effort to make sure that the church held onto the truth of the gospel. More than that, they were trying to teach something really important that Jesus had taught them, the importance of loving one another and holding on to that as they try to be more like Jesus. Looking at the books more closely, 1 Peter was written under the rule of Caesar Nero and focuses a lot on suffering. It's also clearly written to a mixed audience, which is very interesting because if you remember, Paul mentions that he was commissioned to go and work with the Greeks or the Gentile church, while Peter says that he was commissioned to work with the Jewish church. And so this is showing the development of the church, that there's now a mixed audience. 1 Peter focuses on suffering of all kinds, with the importance of fixing our eyes on God and continuing to have hope through persecution. 2 Peter is often compared to the book of Jude, as there's a lot of overlap, and nobody's entirely sure which book came first, but the focus is a lot on dualism, antinomianism, and Gnosticism, ideas that were all coming in from this mixed Gentile church, things that had come through from their pagan roots and beliefs, and Peter was really just trying to get the church to focus in on what the main important message of the gospel was. Okay, we are really speeding along. Moving on to the epistles of John. Now, John is the apostle that was sent and commissioned to lead the churches in Asia Minor, so that is where modern day Turkey is now. I'll put up a quick graph on the screen. And so because John was an elder of the churches in Asia, that is where the letter was most likely written to. We've heard the context of Ephesus and Asia Minor in a few of the other videos, but if you're joining us for the first time, I'll zoom through it quickly. Essentially, Ephesus was a melting pot of different religions, beliefs, backgrounds, myths, ideologies, and philosophies. It was a hotspot for coming up with new things. And so religious syncretism, the taking of different pieces from different religions and mixing them together, was very, very relevant in this space. I've heard it said before that Ephesus was essentially like a spiritual Disneyland. There were so many things going on all at once. The church was under heavy persecution, facing things like dualism, false teachings, Gnosticism, and apostasy. John calls not only for the belief in Jesus, but to put an action behind that. Love, caring for one another, looking after one another. He calls the church to walk in wisdom, to be spiritually discerning, and to be wary of false teachers. But deeper than that, he calls them to love one another. All 5 of these books point to one thing: holding on to Jesus and to the body of the church through persecution and suffering. Thanks for watching, guys. As always, our faith is something to be nurtured and grown until it's bearing fruits. So let the word come alive for you again this week. Let's not just talk the talk, let's walk the walk and continue to elevate our faith one week at a time. I'll see you guys next week. Bye!